Merry Christmas, everyone!
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
I always love this time of year. I mean, getting to spend time with family, no college classes, no work, getting gifts. All that is nice and all, but what I really like about Christmas are the Christmas specials. Whether it's watching the Christmas spirit unfold before your eyes while watching TBS's all-day A Christmas Story marathon, or watching the greatest Christmas-themed movie ever made, It's a Wonderful Life. I'm not even gonna touch that argument, but aside from those, it's always nice to just kick back on Christmas Day and watch some cartoon specials. Whether it be a Charlie Brown Christmas, Arnold's Christmas from Hey Arnold, or the amazing Ed, Edd, and Eddy episode, Fa La 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 Ed. I mean, for such a simple episode, it captures the Christmas spirit in a way that I don't really think I've seen any show capture before. Granted, I don't think it's the best Christmas episode of all time, but it's still unique enough and tackles a topic in a style that's all its own. While it does poke a little bit of fun at how ridiculous Christmas can make people act, it also embraces the meaning behind it and portrays it as something that can be found, well, anywhere, so long as you put your heart into it. And as you can imagine, it was very well received by the fans of Ed, Edd, and Eddy. But the episode I'm talking about today is pretty good too. Unlike Fa La 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 Ed, which focuses on the more positive sides of Christmas, Jingle Jingle Jangle focuses on the more greedy sides of Christmas. You know, kinda like Road to the North Pole. For kids. It's about one of the three main characters, Eddy, trying to get adopted by another family for no other reason than he got nothing but clothes for Christmas. Something he actually references in Fa La 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 Ed.
Anyways, Christmas stinks. All I ever get is clothes.
So Double D and Ed try to help him see the true meaning of Christmas, and we get to see all the different ways Eddy's greed ruins his plan, and the fun and creative ways he gets thrown out. Pretty simplistic story, right? Well, actually there's a little bit more to it. Now there are some very obvious hints that this episode is following the story of how Christmas came to be, the birth of Jesus. But in typical Ed, Edd, and Eddy fashion, this story is being told in a much different style. Eddy going door to door trying to get adopted is a representation of Joseph and Mary looking for an inn. The three kings are portrayed by the Canker sisters, and they follow a bright star that was caused by a flashlight Eddy used to find his gifts. Double D dresses up as an angel, and Ed dresses up as
the son of a shepherd,
in order to try and teach Eddy this very story. And it all culminates to them being found in a quote-unquote manger. In a way, it's like if the story of Jesus' birth were to happen again in this day and age. And anyone will tell you that when it comes to Christmas, a lot of people have become much more spoiled and view it as much more materialistic. So here, they're taking the person that encompasses that viewpoint and making him the baby Jesus of the story. Yeah, that alone sounds like a perfect setup, and they really do a lot with it. First off, Eddy's greed is displayed in many different ways through many different scenarios, and the result of them all stand out. He's too obvious about his intentions with Johnny, he's too ignorant to how sensitive Jimmy is, and the only time he actually does hide his greed well, it's with Rolf, who's the one guy who would not have presents. So, yeah, each experience is very different. And of course, it's nice to see how each character celebrates and what their traditions are. At least the first time around, you know you're going to get to learn something new about all these characters. And that's a nice feeling to have if you've been watching every episode up to this point.
Each Christmas we bring winter inside, Eddy. It's our family tradition. A small thanks to Mother Nature.
And can I just take a second here and praise Rolf's song, because it is so catchy that I honestly think a lot of people should be playing it during Christmas time.
Yes, my Ed cures the meat and starts the fruits and sugar beets. Yes, my Ed will sauce the pork and stabs it with her silver fork. Yes, my Ed will cuts the cheese and gives a loaf of bread a squeeze.
So yeah, clearly they put a lot of thought into this episode. The mere skeleton of it is put together very impressively, because it's perfectly taking the story and blending it with the style of the show and its humor. And on top of that, they mix in some very creative traditions for each character, and have a fun and catchy song. But having a good setup like that doesn't always make your episode. You gotta have some great humor to fill it in with. And this episode has some pretty decent humor. As previously stated, this episode is very creative with each character's traditions, that every time Eddy walks into someone's house, the humor gets a clean slate and they can literally do whatever with these houses. Well, almost anything. It still has to fit the characters' personalities, but when you have characters like Rolf, you basically can do whatever and it'll be funny. So, for a first special, this really shows how well the writing staff knows their characters and knows what they can get away with. And trust me, that helps out a lot with the directions this episode goes. Because this episode is keeping a greedy undertone, a lot of Eddy's jokes can be a lot darker, but this episode understands that there has to be some kind of repercussion, so every time Eddy does something to hurt another character, the episode makes sure he gets a harsher result, and they have a lot of fun with the ways he gets kicked out. They can be creative, they can be crazy, they can even be relatable. And even more impressively, the episode never really has a moment where Eddy gets too unlikable. Don't get me wrong, Ed, Edd, and Eddy can have a bit of an acquired taste at times, and this episode has moments where it feels like they're about to overdo something. But luckily, each time something happens to break it up or make you laugh, whether it be by Eddy's doing or one of the side stories. That being said, the episode, in my opinion, takes kind of a risk with its ending, because it does a bait and switch with a nice little sympathetic moment with Eddy, only for Eddy to go right back to his greedy self and almost ruin everyone's Christmas. And on top of that, even though Eddy gets rightfully punished again, the other two get roped in with him, which is kind of unfair because the whole time they had nothing to do with his greed. They were simply trying to help him see Christmas in a better way. So, yeah, an ending like that can easily be a risk, as a good portion does get left up to interpretation. Now for me, I always interpreted that as an ironic twist, but I do think there's a pretty big chance left up that someone can interpret the ending as an underthought dark joke, which can ruin it for some people, so it's a pretty damn risky move. But honestly, even if you view it like that, it's really not the worst ending. The kids get their Christmas back, the Grinch of the story gets what he deserves, and again, it all fits with the story they're parroting.
Well, this image certainly has the Christmas spirit.
Overall, while I prefer Fa La 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 Ed as I find it more charming and hilarious, I still find this episode impressive. They did an out-of-this-world job with their setup, they seem like they had a lot of fun with their humor, they took a risk with the ending, but still made the ending tie everything together. It's just an overall great episode to me, and I think they even used this as a blueprint for their following specials, as a lot of them seem to follow the same concept, parroting the stereotype or history of the holiday they're associated with. And to me, this episode is just another example of how ahead of their time the show was, and how most of their episodes seem to improve the older you get.